Episode of the Relevant Recruiter Show. This is your host, Donnie Gupton, and today I'm excited to introduce Jacob Crossley. Jacob is going to share his white glove recruiting service strategy. Now, I had the pleasure of working with Jacob over the last several months. Actually, it was months ago, but we're reconnecting to talk about that experience as well. So, Jacob is the owner of Crossley Staffing with his wife, Joy, and they're focused in the IT space specifically. When we were working together, he was really dialed into C#, but they've continued to expand into more general kind of IT recruitment. And they're really, using cutting edge digital strategies and machine learning in order to really match the specific needs of the clients in their sector. And so Jacob really takes a lot of passion in that white glove approach for his clients and candidates. And he's going to share some of his tips and tricks on that today. So Jacob, thank you so much for joining me on the Relevant Recruiter Show.
Yeah, Donnie, Gally, thank you for the invite. I was very excited when you sent me the possibility of being on here, and
Yep.
I hope it's not too noisy. I'm at the lovely Brookstone Country Club. My kids are preparing for a tournament, so normally a little different backdrop. I hope it doesn't come across as too haphazard. But
You're good. You're good, man.
anyway, yeah,
What type of tournament are they preparing for?
golf tournament. So
Nice.
yeah, we're not bad parents pulling them out of school. It's actually like in our county, it's a half day every day this week because there's parental
Yep.
conferences and stuff. So we're making the
Well,
most of it. They got one of their 3 finals tournaments for this season coming up this weekend. So
that's really cool. That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
Well, there's a nice little fun, little personal note to start us off right away. So thanks for teeing that up. Hey, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how did you get into the recruiting industry?
Yeah, well, I guess for many years I was on the other side as both a software engineer who was recruited by recruiters, and then an engineering leader who got to work with recruiters. And I one day woke up and decided I wanted to get into sales and really become. I was already kind of doing sales, but I wanted to become very good at sales. And the more I thought about it, I mean, some of the best salespeople in the world are staffing industry folks, and you get a lot of reps in. And it turns out I wasn't in a rather large staffing agency. I might have been one of the worst business developers that there was, but I was a good leader and a good account manager that was able to bring success to some rather large accounts. And so I just fell in love with every aspect of the industry. There's not a day that goes by that I don't enjoy learning more and more about recruiting and how I can better serve our clients.
That's awesome. Now, what specifically about your time, kind of before you owned your own business, like what inspired you to start your own recruiting agency?
I guess funny story. I mean, it's not going to sound probably professional or business glamorous, but I just knew that I was destined to own at least one company, if not more. And I have owned or been part owner of some nice software companies, but I wanted kind of full control of a company to shape every aspect of it. And I thought, hey, if I'm almost 50, and if my 90-year-old self was like, hey, you had a great career, but you never did what you set out to do, it'd be a disappointment. And I didn't
Right.
want my 90-year-old self to be disappointed in me.
Yep. Got it. So this is
Yeah.
you wanted to get into being able to build your own dream.
Build my own dream. That's
Yeah.
right.
Love it. So what do you think, I mean, for you, when you went out on your own, what were some of the big challenges that you faced right away when you were starting your own recruiting agency?
Well, I think we kind of touched on that in what I said. I was not one of the best business developers. And I mean, if you
Right.
look at most CEOs, many of them were, decorated salespeople at SaaS companies and things like
Right.
that. I mean, that was their DNA upbringing. Mine was a software engineer. And then I transitioned pretty quickly into recruiting leadership. So, honestly, in preparation, of opening Crossley Staffing, I did a ton of research, and it's recruitment coaching and recruiting programs, it's an interesting space. And it took me a while to find you, but when I did, I was like, thank God, because you were a good transition into it. And I think that was a blessing to find you when I did, because you were very helpful early on, in helping, my blind spots and the stuff that I wasn't good at. So
That's good to hear. And we'll definitely dig into that here
yeah.
in a little bit. Definitely want to tell, and share more about that story. What are some of the things, like in your time in this industry? And man, I feel like in 2020 to 2022 alone, there's been some massive changes. But
Yeah.
how have you seen the industry change over the years? Is there anything you're doing to kind of adapt to those changes?
It's interesting. I mean, I think from a candidate's perspective, there's the economy. I think from 2010 until 2018, there was a constant uptick. It was more and more a candidate side market. And I think with COVID, for some strange dynamic, it became a hugely candidate side market where a resource who would have commanded 100K in 2018 might be commanding 140K or greater right now. And so I think that knowing how to navigate that both with candidates, because you have to have some really in-depth conversations with candidates, and you have to navigate that with companies and company leadership. And it's not an easy conversation across the board. So I think that's a massive change, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that would echo that one there.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things that you try to do to really kind of stand out and differentiate yourself. I mean, there's so many different recruiting agencies out there, as you well know. And, with where I sit, differentiation is a challenge. A lot of recruiters kind of look the same, sound the same, and act the same. One of the things you're doing to really differentiate yourself is your white glove, service. And you feel like you're transforming kind of lives, you're transforming the business. So what is in your mind, like what is white glove recruiting?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it starts with a couple of core beliefs, that kind of inform the rest of the system. But for a company of any size, whether you're, a multi-billion-dollar company or a F100 or one of us smaller businesses, a hire is super important. The cost of switching when you've made a mistake is detrimental in many ways. I mean, it can be detrimental to a leader's career path. It can be devastating to a small business. So that's one thing, is being aware of how consequential the hire is from an employer's perspective. And I think the next thing is how consequential it is to an employee's perspective. I mean, you're talking about breadwinners for families. You're talking about stability. You're talking about upgrading a person's life. So I think it's huge from that perspective. So honestly, I think each company, mapping backwards from that, has its own unique culture. And I mean, you run an amazing organization, as do many companies out there. But what you ask of your employees and what working for you, it's not the same as it is at the next company. And so
Right.
for me to understand what you're like as a leader, what your other, downstream leaders are like, and what it's really going to be like to work for you, I don't want to make a mistake for your sake, and I don't want to make a mistake for that employee's sake. And so understanding that, and heck, I begin every search with a prayer. Let me change some candidate's life, because coming to work for Donnie Gupton is going to be an enormous gift. It might be okay for somebody, but for another person, it might be plugging them in where they've meant to be. And I hope I catch that person for you. So
Yep. Yep. That's awesome. What would you say, like, what do you think from a tactical standpoint, like some of your best practices are, or what would you
yeah.
recommend for somebody that wants to kind of, provide more of a white glove?
Let me start with a huge like counter example of what
What bad
white
looks
glove
like?
is not.
Yeah.
So one of my buddies is a fairly large hiring manager, and um, we don't work together right now for various reasons. It's kind of just something as a friend, like he's not a client of mine. He's just a good friend of mine and can speak frankly about staffing. And he's like, listen, I had to. I'm hiring a bunch of PMs right now for this huge project, SAP PMs, and he goes, I got to the point where I had to have a video interview, and I watch it out. I get like 20, 30 cans at a time. I watch the video, I cut it down to 10, and I interview. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I mean, th- this is insane. And I said, listen, you're even if you were a talent acquisition leader, somebody's treating you like they're a sourcer, maybe like some sort of low level sourcer, and you're the next step in a talent acquisition system. I'm
Right.
like, you're a VP of IT at a traded company. Like, there's no way you should be being treated like this.
Right.
What we do, like, we have tight SLAs, right? For internal SLAs. So if Donnie Gupton has an open requisition, um, we're expecting 3 submittals within 72 business hours, and each of those submittals should result in a first interview. And one of those 3 first interviews should ultimately result in an offer. And if you work that backwards, you're all of the work's taken off of your plate, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
we're handling every aspect of coordinating those interviews. We're handling offer. We're handling all of that for you. So your investment, your time investment in that is a busy leader is the 30 minutes to sometimes an hour that you spend with my staff initially to understand all of that. Obviously, if we've worked together in the past, that time goes down dramatically, but that first one might be a time investment. And then your interview investment. And like you're not calling me after the interview like they didn't even know, that I was a recruitment coach that specializes in recruitment entrepreneurs. They thought that I was like, I don't know, like a fast food company or something. Like,
Right.
we're not having conversations like that. They're coming into you highly prepped, highly aware of what it's like to work with you, highly prepped about like what this job is all about. So you're picking from one of 3. That's your toughest choice. Which one of these 3 awesome people is truly the best fit? And so,
Right.
you know, what could have been a dismal 30, 40-hour investment for you that ended in heartache and no hire was like maybe a 2-hour investment that
Right.
resulted in a game-changing hire.
Yep. Yep. Now, how do let's flip it onto the other side. So how do you kind of
Yeah.
provide the white glove onto the candidate? Like what type of experience are you trying to provide there?
Yeah, for the candidate, I mean, there's candidates that aren't a match, and I
Right.
think just timely updates for those candidates and polite but informed way of telling them why they're not a match. So let's get that out of the way. You never ghost a candidate because that's your candidate for life if you've treated them well. Even if I didn't end up placing them at Donnie Gupton, I might place them somewhere else in several months.
Right.
But for a candidate who is on a golden path to being hired by you or any other company, I keep picking on you, but it could be any company.
Yeah.
That's that's preparing them. There's generic prep that would be true and will serve them for the rest of their career. Interview prep. There's prep very specific to you and this job at hand. There is reminding them, numerous times about the interview, the preparation cycle for the interview. There's the retrospectives after the interview. All of the coaching and just managing their expectations through the process. And frankly, from the candidate's perspective, I mean, there's a little bit of me holding you or the hiring manager accountable to the process that we customized for this specific hire. Because that's another thing I want to do is I want to protect your recruitment brand.
Right.
I'm functioning almost like your in-house recruiter, and it's very important to me that the candidates leave, for no matter what the result is, they leave loving their experience having interviewed with Donnie Gupton.
Yep.
So
No, so you're really truly partnering with your client, which then allows you to kind of have that, type of relationship and that conversation with your candidate.
that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you that are listening, with us live, if you're enjoying what Jacob has to say here, go ahead and tap that little like button, love button, or one of those other reactions that you have there.
Yeah.
And feel free to go in and ask any questions about what Jacob's doing here with the white glove recruiting style. So my question to you, Jacob, is, sometimes the ideal doesn't happen, right? So you kind of have this promise in place, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm going to submit in 72 hours. Staying white glove, I only have 2 of the 3, hypothetically. How do you go about handling it now?
You have to be frank. I mean, I've had a number of tough searches this year where we definitely didn't meet kind of the candidate flow portion of our SLA, and I think it's being very frank. I'm going to let my client know, hey Donnie, you know what? You're a little off in the search. It's usually money, like what you're willing to pay in terms of compensation, but it could be in what you're asking for. And
Right.
I think timely updates are important. And I will let you know, hey Donnie, this is what you want. This is usually how much they've cost, and factually, like, this is what they're costing right now based on
Right.
these 3 people. You could have an interview with these 3 or 4 specific candidates, but this is what their compensation ask is. Now, I'm willing to, we agreed to do this search for you at this price. We can tough it out. A lot of agencies won't do that. They'll, if there's too much candidate scarcity for a given thing based on a compensation ask or something like that, they'll drop the search and move on, and you won't know why you haven't heard from them.
Right.
I will stick with it. I will say, hey Donnie, buckle up. This is, I'll report weekly activity of what we're doing and who we're talking to, but that's your hardship. You're 20 grand under market for what you're asking. But
Right.
if it's a numbers game at that point, it's an outreach, it's an outbound on our side. We're going to have to talk to a lot more people than normal. And I'm comfortable with that if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now here's the question is how, and I think this would be great advice for the audience here, is like, how do you get to the point where your client is actually listening to your advice, right? And they're taking what you have to say. Like, what is it that you're doing tactically that's helping them go, yeah, you know what, Jacob, I trust you. I listen to you. We're going to do this your way, right?
Yeah. I honestly, I mean, I think I advise from a good place.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, coming in there trying to change the way I'm trying to blend in, right? Like, as an operator, I'm trying to blend in and do the best I can. I will provide insight, and hey, if we did this, this could change. But like, if we don't have a fundamental trust with one another and we can't reach that rather quickly, I mean, we're in a blessed and fortunate position where we can pick and choose our clients. And
Yep.
not every client is for us, and we're not
Right.
for every client. And so, I mean, if we can't have that fundamental level of like business frank trust with one another, then maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's, good for others to hear, is like getting yourself into that position of power. Because working with bad clients just wastes so much energy, time, energy, effort. It creates a bad experience for all. So it's awesome to hear that you've been able to generate that much demand to be able to, have that much power. Right. But I think that's where so many recruiters make mistakes, is they're desperate for business, and then they end up working with, clients and roles they don't even believe in, just to kind of, make sure that they're keeping the revenue, so I think it's cool when you can. That's why I believe that having a business development strategy is the most powerful thing that a recruiter can have, because it puts me into a position of power to pick and choose.
I mean, on a fundamental level, like I believe in you. Like I would recruit for you. I know, like I've got a lot of history for you. And if you had an open rec, like an open need,
Mm-hmm.
I would feel great about pulling a person out of your competitor or an adjacent industry and like look them in the eye. Hey, you've got a better home to go work with. You're gonna love working with Donnie.
Right.
And if I don't have that belief about a client, or if candidate after candidate's having a turn and burn interview experience, I look. I mean, we give very long guarantees, and we're able to do that because I believe in the client and I believe in the candidate. And, it's that simple. So you got to
Yep.
have that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, kind of I'm going to throw one out here from left field.
Sure.
Is Joy still partnered with you?
Joy is amazing. Yeah, she's a huge part of our company. And actually, I didn't want to correct you too much earlier, but she's the majority owner of
Yeah.
Crossley Staffing. So
Yeah.
but no, she is amazing. She, being a startup, as we transition and to having our first employees soon, um, we're still going to be in a position where she and I are playing multiple roles.
Right.
And she's very good at what she does. She's very intelligent, and we work. You know, it's a risk. We've been married a long time, but it's a
Yeah.
risk to have to work together. But I think it's
Yep.
done nothing but strengthen our enjoyment together and strengthen our relationship. But
Yeah. That's awesome.
she's taken on a ton of responsibility and
Yeah.
done very well with it.
Well, and I
Yeah.
was gonna, before you mentioned that, I was gonna give everybody a little bit of context of that Joy is your wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that being said, just kind of one little thought, and you kind of brought it up is you know, because I've worked with other kind of husband and wife teams. I mean, what do you just kind of your pitch of like, where do you guys draw the line? Where do you guys kind of create the balance of like, okay, well, we got the business out on, now we're gonna go, be mom and dad and husband and wife. Do you guys have any
No,
rules
that's
in place or?
That's a good one. I mean, I think like by nature, if I had like a 9 to 5 job, I'm that bad husband that wouldn't want to talk about it. Like I don't like talking about like, hey, here's my day and give you a play by play. I'm
Right.
not that person. And Joy's not too much of one either. I think in the early days there was a ton of knowledge transfer that had to take place with her just to bring her up to speed on just certain things that she didn't know, being newer to the recruiting industry. But like I think we both work hard, and so there's times where like she or I really want to talk about something, but if the other one's like, man, I'm burnt out, let's park that until tomorrow. We give each other plenty of permission to,
Right.
and don't take it hard, like, hey, that's first thing tomorrow morning, that's not tonight. So
Yep. Yep. Cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that up.
yeah.
What you guys are doing there.
Yeah.
Kind of transitioning to some of our work together. You mentioned early on that you were, as you went out on your own, business development was not like second nature for you. It was nothing that you really had mastered or doing consistently. So I know that was kind of one of the big reasons. But before we even get to that, I mean, there's obviously a lot of coaches out there. I mean, what made you decide to work with me?
It's been a while and I'm removed, but I think like, so I don't remember like the micro decisions that led
Right.
up to that. I think number one was credibility. Like, I mean,
Right.
I don't want to cast aspersion on a lot of them, but I had a lot of meetings, and I watched you. I don't know how you got on my radar, but I started watching you and watching your interactions. Probably shows like this, and I thought, hey, what he says makes sense. And even though I wasn't aware about some of the things that you
Right.
taught, I'm like, it just agrees with you. Just the truth of it. Hey, this makes fundamental sense. And I felt the same way when you and I had our first one-on-one conversation. In my opinion, never changed throughout the program. So just
Awesome.
it's a good common sense, makes sense. I didn't know about any of it, but like
Right.
none of it all passed the sniff test, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. What, like if you were going to look at and point to like one specific area or aspect of your business that has improved or transformed as a result of going through the coaching program, what would that be?
I would say it's ironic as a software engineer, I should be aware of all forms of automation and things like that. But like not having that deep sales leader SaaS type background, I automation wasn't really on my radar.
Right.
I knew it existed, but I didn't know if it was for me. And so like the level of automation you provide, but in a way that like I'm proud of. Like I'm not ashamed of the way
Right.
I'm interacting with people through light bits of automation that hand people off to me in a cared for and a great conversational space. Like I didn't know that was possible. Like I
Right.
thought, you know, automation, that's going to get me kicked out of society. And it did just the opposite. Like I have had, I think I looked on my LinkedIn, and there's a certain place that will tell you when you signed up, but I think I might have been 2004. I was on LinkedIn pretty early, but like since going through your program, I have more meaningful conversations on LinkedIn than all the years previous of that combined. So, I mean, that's just great.
Yeah,
Who
that's
wouldn't
awesome
want
to
that?
hear.
Even if you didn't care about business development, that's fantastic, right? Like I feel like
Yeah.
I'm a good LinkedIn citizen. So,
Yep. Yep. Well, and I think that and I'm happy that you're sharing it that way, because I think there is such a negative stigma around automation, and for right reasons, right? Is a lot of people use it very
yeah,
poorly. A lot of people use it to transact, and so it puts a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth, right? But I think one of the things for me is like there's no real moral high ground on how you go about getting a client or a candidate, right, or capturing their attention. I mean,
yeah,
tell me an approach, and I'll find you somebody who's irritated about that approach, right?
right.
But the way we teach the automation is much more conversational, like you're saying. It's just creating more meaningful conversations. We're not trying to eliminate Jacob in the process. We're trying to make you more available, by leveraging the automation. So love to hear how it's impacted you, and thank you for sharing your perspective with that. What
Yeah.
when you're talking about with me, and I know again, we're a couple months removed from this, so
Yeah.
as best as you can. But what do talking about working with me specifically as a coach, how would you describe our working relationship, or what it's like working with me?
I mean, again, it was what I expected having watched your videos and like all the research I did leading up to it. But I think it's a lot of work. Like that's fair to say, but it's good
Hmm.
work. Like it's good work that it's a framework that if you complete it, it's time consuming, but it will serve you for life. And it's something I've thought about revisiting because I think it's worth revisiting as perspectives change and
Yep.
you mature in a career. And that's a great part about it. I believe I'm able to do that, right? Like I
Yeah.
can look back through my all of the worksheets you've prepared and I can revisit those. It's a lot of work. I think there's a lot of accountability because the way your program runs you go through with some people that are running side by side with you. And I mean, frankly, you can tell on the calls. I think I was in a very good class and I still keep in touch with some of
Hmm.
those people, which was that's another amazing part of it. But like you can tell who was on top of it that week and who maybe didn't do what they were
Yep.
supposed to do. And nobody gets their feelings hurt, but you don't want to show up and be that one that was, which I was a few times. I mean,
Yep.
business happens, life happens, but like
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's a good, healthy accountability environment. And your expertise. I mean, I look at, people become experts either because they have inborn knowledge and because that was their gift, but they've had tons of repetitions. And I think you have had so many repetitions, you're just going to know things that people don't. And so it's great to get that insight.
Yeah. I
So
appreciate that. Appreciate that feedback.
you know more recruiters than I know, or probably than most people on the planet know. So
Yeah, yeah, I do. I do have a network of some recruiters out there.
yeah,
It's been a humbling journey, and it's been fun to be able to be a part of my own journey, and the community and the wonderful people that I'm connected with. So,
yeah.
yeah, you looking at results, and I don't want you to share what you're not comfortable. But maybe a better way for me to ask this is like, how would you say the overall health of your business has changed, or how was it before versus where it's at now, after implementing some of the coaching stuff?
Well, I would say like identifiably, I think I shared this with you quite some time ago, but like I think this is an important benchmark for anybody that might be in my shoes that is, you know, considering this program, because it's not a huge ask, but it's, I mean, it's enough to get, you know, sit down, enjoy. And I had to have a very serious conversation. Do we
Yep.
want to spend this kind of money? And
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, you know, obviously, if you're in the staffing industry, you know what placements are and all. It, it's a one placement more than ROIs you. And I think we had three, probably quite a few more now, but like three when we were close to it, close to the
Right.
timelines that we could easily trace to this program, and things we learned to do that we were not doing from this program. Three placements, and that was, I don't want to misstate the timelines, but it was within a month or so.
Right.
I mean, some of them I think happened during the program.
Right.
Um, and so that to me is enough said. I mean, there's, sure that ROI is many times over, but I think I probably should still look at it and have clever ways of attributing revenue to this program. I don't think I have anything tight in place, but like, just like I said,
Mm-hmm.
the way things feel and the way that I interact with people is tremendous, and that's as good of a feeling as the revenue. So
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no,
yeah,
the impact is always, and the way people measure it is so different, right? And where they find the
yeah,
value, and everybody wants to know about the revenue and the ROI, but then there's also like, the other things. Maybe sometimes it's
yeah,
confidence, it's clarity, it's stepping outside of your comfort zone. So I always enjoy these shows just to hear what everybody's perspective is,
yeah.
where they found the most impact.
I would say I know it's not your model, but like I I think that um, many larger, you know, recruiting agencies, even some of the world's largest, um, it's it's no secret that the recruiting industry has a bad reputation. I mean,
Yeah.
just because of the level of noise, I think there's a lot of churn and burn with young recruiters not sure if this is their career path, and think, there's a lot of reasons, but like
Yep.
if you had a program that was able to be brought into like a, let's say, Tech Systems or an Insight Global, like
Right.
they're both fine recruiting, but I'm just saying them because they're large.
Right.
If you could bring that in and train one of their bullpens in one of their bigger geographies, it would make, slowly but surely, you know, it would transform the way I think that recruiters are received by businesses. It
No,
changed
that's
that
cool. That's really
perception,
cool feedback, man. Thank you.
you know.
Yeah.
So you probably wouldn't want to do that, but you could.
It would be a big lift. It would be a big lift. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I think for me, one of the things that I aspire to do, Jacob, is, with my program is take somebody like yourself that's an expert that does provide white glove service that is different, and go showcase you, because the reality of it is if you don't have the skills to differentiate yourself and through business development and through marketing, then naturally your client and candidate is going to think of you the same way they think of most recruiters. And, hey, maybe they've had positive experiences or maybe they haven't, but I think that's why it's so important, and one of the things that, like I said, I really, inspires me to get up and do this every day is how can I help Jacob, become the go-to in his market and really stand out from the next people that aren't, doing it the right way. Right.
yeah.
Because there's, I think from where I sit my wife became a real estate agent
Oh yeah,
um,
that's right.
a couple about a year and a half ago now, right? She went through rigorous training. She had to get, do, I think 6 weeks of courses every single night through the state of Idaho, taking tests, and has to have tests ongoing, has ongoing certifications and training. And there's nothing like that exists in the recruiting industry. If I
Right.
wanted to be a recruiter tomorrow, I could just go to my LinkedIn profile and fire it up and say I'm a recruiter. And next thing you know, you're competing against that individual, right?
Yeah.
That, from where I sit, I think that's a big challenge. Is that which kind of leads into like, oh, I'm going to put my toe in the water here, see if I like it, because we all know there's big fees, right?
Yeah.
And then now next thing you know, Jacob has to go compete against that. So, yeah, I think that differentiation is so important. And I
Yeah.
know that's something that you guys have done a good job of doing. Um, what would you say if somebody was kind of on the fence about working with me? What would be your message to them?
I would say, I guess I would want to know why they're on the fence, right? Like if
Mhm.
why did they come to you in the first place? And um, it's funny. I actually talked to a particular person one time many months ago, and I think when I explained to them, hey, there is a commitment, there is some level of work you have to do to make this work, they they didn't want to do it.
Yep.
But I'd tell the person, if you were like me, where you're like, I want my company to succeed. Look, nothing else matters with a company. It doesn't matter what CRM it is. It doesn't matter, what your website looks like. Nothing matters if you don't have a predictable way of generating revenue. And I put in this much elbow grease, this much lifting. I can get a client. Then you're dead.
Yep.
If you're not dead already, you will be dying soon. You will be going back to corporate America, and so you need to start somewhere. And as you mature as a business, you're going to need other forms of Donnie. But like Donnie could be a good lifeline that will get you that first client. He won't get it for you. You're going to have to learn his system. You're going to have to do it, but you won't die. And so if you're a sincere person and you want your recruiting business to work, make the money investment, make the time investment. You won't regret it.
Love it, man. Appreciate that. Appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
Going back to you, Jacob, last kind of as we wind this thing down here, I
Yeah.
mean, what are you fired up about most? What excites you? Like, what's the future of Crossley? What's next?
What's next? I mean, I guess um, we're hopeful to get more and more new clients. I feel like we've got systems in place, and we're looking to start blessing employees. Like I think
Yep.
we have a different model that we have huge differentiators that we probably don't have time to get into. That's exciting for employees,
Yep.
and like we bless the lives of candidates, we bless the lives of companies, and we're looking to bless the lives of some employees. We want to transform their lives, with some culture, with some systems we have in place. I think that I could take a senior recruiter, senior account manager. I can dramatically increase their income, and I can give them a better quality of life than they've ever had before. And that's what's next for us. That's what we're excited about, and that's coming up soon. So,
Yeah, that's epic, man. That's
yeah,
epic. Now, last question here, and you get to be the ultimate expert.
sure.
For the listeners who feel stuck, I mean, what's your golden piece of advice for them? What's one thing that you would recommend for somebody who's kind of stuck or wants to see some of the success and results that you've had?
I think get unstuck. I mean, I think you need, no matter what kind of person you are, you're either the kind of person who thinks too little or thinks too much. A framework is the perfect cure for either person. If you have a framework and you're like, look, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it good enough, and I'm going to get into it and learn as I go. But you have a framework to work towards, that makes sense, that will yield results. Get unstuck and put the work in. Like, don't, if you're an overthinker, don't make too many excuses. It's never going to be good enough. Just release and go. And if you're an underthinker, stop being careless. Here's a framework for you that's going to help you succeed.
Excellent. Excellent. So find your framework, take the action, do the work, get unstuck. Jacob, thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much for being here today, dropping
Yeah.
value, sharing your experience working with me, sharing your tips and tricks on, delivering white glove service. For those of you that are listening, you can check Jacob out on LinkedIn. Look for Jacob Crossley. He is attached to this training here. Make sure you connect with him and stay tuned for next week's live episode of the Relevant
Yeah.
Recruiter Show. We'll be back here on Wednesday. If you did enjoy this, if you can go ahead and give our guests some love today, I would greatly appreciate that. Jacob, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking with you soon, my friend.
Donnie, thanks for the invite. I hope I get to reappear sometime here on your show.
Absolutely.
All
We'll be
right.
looking forward to it.
Take care, sir. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.